the Europeans and the Arabs fought, what was what was the level of technology? We talk of industrialization during that time in Europe. What was the level of technology? Today we now have cars that can fly and swim at the same time. What then was the level of technology out there?
Okay, so as you rightly said, technology has always been in a process of improvement. And during that time, in fact, they were not having enormous technology as we are having it today. But they had risen from...
You are welcome to Kimbo Royal Tree, the best hotel in Winneba, close to Winneba Johnson and direct opposite the Guel Filling Station. Among some of the facilities Kimbo Royal Tree offers its clients and customers include: number one, we have a serene swimming pool where you can relax your body at any time, swim at any time, any day at affordable prices. In fact, you can come here 24/7. We operate all time. We there for you. Kimbo Royal Treat is having an event center where we host every type of event. Any event you want, whether birthday party, weddings, any event at all, we can give you the best facility to host your event that you want to host. Kimbo Royal Treat is having a gym center where you can gym your body at any time, morning, evening, afternoon, any time at all you feel. And we also have a kitchen where we offer both local and foreign dishes. Any type of food you want, just come to Kimbo Royal Treat and we will give it to you at very affordable prices. We also have a clinic attached to the hotel where in case of any emergency or any other time you can go there for the services at very, very subsidized prices. We've reduced the prices drastically just to favor our customers. Call the contact, the numbers on this list.
Initially they had not industrialized their economy.
Okay.
They were also living as ordinary human beings who use simple tools in their affairs, their day-to-day activities.
Okay.
But as time went on, through innovation, they were able to come up with inventions. They were able to come up with the improvement in machinery activities.
Okay.
So at that time, they had built factories and they had come up with companies that can process goods into byproducts for human consumption.
Okay.
And that was why it became very necessary for them to get raw materials to feed these industries. And this industrial revolution first started in what? In Britain.
Wow.
It first started in Britain and later on it affected the other European.
Our so-called colonial masters.
Of course. They were the first to have introduced it, and later it affected the other European countries like the French and Germans and the likes.
And at that time they were having these ships they used to sail.
That was the period, we call it the period of Renaissance. Renaissance. That was when the idea of geography became very predominant. So people at that time could now discover, navigate through the studies of geography and all those stuff.
Using the compass and
exactly.
Whatever. Wow.
So it helped them to navigate and explore so many areas.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about slavery and then colonialism here. So what is this colonialism about? Is it, which one first? Let's take it one after the other. Is it
so chronologically speaking,
yes,
we will say that slavery took place before colonialism.
Before colonialism. So how did it start?
Okay,
what happened?
Thank you for the question.
They use mirrors.
Oh, fantastic.
Or when they came, we were having tails and they have to cut them off. We were having tails.
I don't know. But these are some of the misconceptions hovering in the environment. That is why it is good that we come across
it. We're having tails.
But
yeah, bro.
We have something we call the European perspective. You know, we have something we call European perspective. Before colonization even took place, there are so many views about we the Africans.
Wow.
Which in most effect were negative views about we the Africans.
It wasn't correct, fallacy.
In fact, they were undermining our innovations and our abilities and capabilities, the things that we can do so far as we the Africans we are concerned.
Wow.
And so when we look at the activities of slavery, before that we will also go to colonialism.
Yes.
Slavery, when you say slavery, what does it even imply in the first place? It's the state of being under a certain force or authority to do what in a normal sense you wouldn't want to do, but you are doing because you are under a certain bondage or control. That's the state of being under a certain servitude.
Wow.
So what is the nature of it in the first place? Before the activities of the Europeans coming to enslave the Africans happened, we the Africans ourselves were having our own way and nature of slavery.
Wow.
We should
it also, means they were not the people who came to start slavery in Africa.
That is the first thing. Exactly, we were doing it ourselves. That's the first thing we should understand. And when the Europeans started coming in into the continent of Africa, Africa was in the period whereby we would say they were in the revolutionary period, or they were the period whereby most of the powerful kingdoms in Africa were colonizing other weaker states in Africa.
Okay.
And why this practice of slavery? Mostly there are some regions, and the geography and the geographical location of most of the kingdoms in Africa shaped their dealings with other weaker states that they found themselves with. So when you come into the western part of Africa, we have kingdoms like the Ashanti Empire. When you look at the location of Ashanti Empire, it's located in a land which is covered with so many thick forests and what have you, that you could not.
The present day, where can you locate it?
The present day is in Ashanti region.
Ashanti region.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that area is very thick in terms of forestry and other. So because of that, the Ashanti couldn't excel. So they needed slaves. Who would use them to explore and clear the land for them to also stay. And aside that, they needed them to engage them in agriculture activities.
Wow.
So that one we term it as domestic slave. And the domestic slave were into categories. We have some of them that more or less like today probably we may say they are house helps.
Okay.
Some of them were in the I hope you're getting it.
So domestic slavery developed now into house help.
Exactly, probably. I don't have any reason, but probably. But one interesting thing about the African slave is that like the one I mentioned, the domestic slave.
Yeah.
Even though we regarded them as slaves, but they had some special treatment.
They are not in chains.
Exactly. They had some level of freedom that they can go about doing their own things. They were not in extreme bondage whereby they could not do anything at all. In fact, some of them even had the opportunity to become prominent in the society. But so far as you are a slave, the only thing that you are deprived of is that you can't rise up to become, let me say, to be part of the royal family, whereby you have the opportunity to become either a king or a queen. This is more or less like the limitation. But aside that, some of them rose up to become powerful within the society.
Wow.
But the latter one that will be introduced by the European was something which was very brutal, which was very contrary to the ones that we the Africans were practicing.
Wow.
But aside that, we shouldn't also undermine the fact that there are certain aspects of the slavery in Africa that was somewhat brutal.
Okay.
I'll say this based on the constant warfare that took. I said when they were coming, it clashed with the period whereby Africans were in the days of revolution.
Okay.
That means Africans were also one way or the other building empires, trying to make stable, states and what have you.
Yes.
And during that time, in fact, almost the entire history of most societies went through revolution. You can talk of the French Revolution, the American Revolution. In fact, so many countries went through revolution.
Wow.
So at that time, Africans were in their period of going through revolution, and it clashed with that of colonialism. That is why they have some kind of misconception about we the Africans, we are barbaric, we are not civilized. It isn't that. Europe did not just rise up to become civilized as they see themselves today. But
it's a process.
It's a process. When you look back in their history, in the days of some of the things that they were doing, probably if you are to measure it at this stage, you say they are probably also not
civilized.
Exactly.
Wow.
So the fact that they came in the period during where Africans were in the periods of revolution doesn't mean the Africans were barbaric and they are warlike. That isn't the case. But it was a natural phenomenon which was happening during the time that they came to the continent of Africa.
So when they came, how did they start it?
Of course.
Did they just start carrying out their strong men? Or how did they start?
Before that, let me just conclude on the nature of the African slavery.
Yeah.
So through wars of conquest, that is where they got most of the slaves.
Yes.
So for instance, the Ashanti Empire. You can talk of the southeastern part of the most kingdoms that emerged, like the Zulu Empire.
Yes.
What they do was that when they go for warfare and they conquer you and you surrender, even if you don't surrender, so far as you are conquered, you are conquered. So what they will do is that they will pick their men, and some of them they will use them in their armies, and others they will use them in their plantation fields and other jobs that they would need them to do. So far as their kingdom was concerned. So that was some, if you like, the radical aspect of the slavery activity that took place. But aside that, the domestic slavery, as explained, was a form of friendly relationship that they were having with their their servants, or if like the slaves. But they wield some kind of freedom for themselves, that they could go about doing whatever that they wish they could do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's look at how the slavery, the European slavery, type of slavery started in Africa. How did it start? Was it that they just come and start carrying out our men and what have you? We've lost a lot. So how did it start?
So the slavery that took place, or that was led by the European, it's a little bit technical. First of all, we need to even consider what triggered the Europeans to come to Africa to look for slaves. All of a sudden, a place that has been described barbaric, you are now looking for their people to do what?
Go and do what?
Exactly.
Barbaric, so, make your place also barbaric, or what is it?
Of course. So, the idea was just behind the Industrial Revolution. That's the fundamental thing that pushed them. That's the push factor to come to Africa. That was the Industrial Revolution. Why am I saying this? When the Industrial Revolution became very prominent, before America even got independence, America got independence in the 1776.
From which people?
From the British. So the Americans were also colonized by the British.
Is that why they call them the Great Britain?
Probably. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go.
Yeah. So when America got independence, and even before the independence, all this while they came to Africa, the British. But then America, they were not. In fact, they were also under colonial activities. So when they came to Africa, they realized that there are certain things that it seems unique about the people of Africa. In terms of the British and the other European, like the Spaniards.
Yes.
They were also having people, or the Portuguese. They were also having people in the Americas. And we can talk of the Caribbeans. All these areas, they were having colonies over there.
Which people? Which country can you mention in the Caribbean?
The Caribbean. You can talk of Haiti.
Haiti.
You can talk of Bahamas.
What of Singapore?
I don't.
Singapore is not there.
No, Singapore is not. I don't think it's located there.
Okay.
Yeah, but for now,
but Haiti is one of the popular
Yeah.
countries.
You can also talk of Latin America, that is Brazil and co. All these people were under.
But is that where this our African country? These black people is not an African country.
Jamaica, exactly.
That's where
they
Jamaica
are also located.
At the Caribbean.
Yes.
Okay.
They are also found there.
Okay.
And so during this period, these countries that we just mentioned, they were colony.
Okay.
Under the powerful European kingdoms are then.
Yes.
Like the British, like the Spaniards, and the Portuguese.
Okay.
They were having colonies over there. So what happened is that they needed strong men and women. Because the idea of Industrial Revolution demands that there should be a constant feed to the industries. The industry need to be fed with raw materials. So having discovered the Americas, and that time the lands of the Caribbeans and the Americas were very, very fertile, that they needed individuals who could go there and cultivate cash crops not ordinary crops, cash crops. I hope you're getting it. But then they were using slaves that they themselves more or less forced on them to use, and most of them were acquired through prisons. Those who were stubborn within the society that are sent to prison, they would just go and gather them and use them in the plantation. But they realized that their energy could not match with the demand of resources that they need, so they couldn't get the quantum of resources that they needed to feed the industry.
Wow.
So that was when they started thinking of looking for another individual who could work harder to produce more resources to feed the industry. Wow. And Africa became the solution to that question. So that was the genesis with regards to they coming to Africa to look for people
to slave them,
to enslave them, so that they can go and produce raw materials to feed their industries. So that was the genesis of the
we are still learning the history, the real history of Africa. So we have looked at quite a number of things, the meaning of the word Africa. We are now here to look at what brought about this slavery and all around it. Then we are also going to look at colonialism after that. If time permits, we will go on and on and on. Stick with us. Let's continue. Yeah. So they came, and then all these things, like they were demanding for stronger men, and they saw Africa to be the solution. So they came to Africa.
Exactly.
So when they came, how did it start?
Yeah. So thanks for this question too. And one thing that probably I would say it's in fact it did not help we the Africans was the attitude some of the African or our ancestors though put on. They don't have we the Africans. In fact, the Europeans, when they came here, most of them were not in their numbers. They were not many. Some of them saw the demand for slaves as an economic venture, because most of the Europeans that came here, what they did was that they will come for the slaves, they will send to Europe, and other people will now come and buy the slaves, and they will send them to their plantation. Wow. So that was the business of other European entities. So when they came here, one thing that prevented we the Africans from resisting the art of slavery was that we are not united. We are not having unity as a people. And that, because when they came here, there were not many. In fact, they were not even having them. Exactly, they were not having army. That they would use to force the Africans. But they more than like they use a strategy in getting the slave. And the strategy that they used was that if you an African state, if you are able to produce slave for them, then you get something from them, which probably will be part of their goods that they will bring as they come along to come and get the slaves.
Examples of those goods.
I think sure. So most of these things that they came, they came in contact or they brought to exchange for our people were petty things that were not, most of them were not having value. Like European drinks, the lingua and the other European drinks, and they were using them in exchange for human beings. So these were some of the funny aspects of the slave trade.
Drink,
That's number one. That's number one.
Let's get about trade.
You can talk of European this thing, like some of them, like their bows, their eating equipment, and other things that were not unique to the people of Africa. It could even be a form of let me say their dress. I hope you're getting it. Whatever that, the point here is that whatever that they exchanged for the slaves were not of value if you compare with human life.
But it was a new thing that Africa we have not seen before.
Human beings are such that when you come in contact with certain thing that is new, you have a way of responding to it, even if that thing might not have a value.
You accept it very fast.
Exactly.
No matter what it will cost you.
Exactly.
Wow.
I hope you're getting it. Even the appearance of most of the white people was a form of, because of their nature.
Yeah.
I hope you're getting it. We kind of started negotiating and liking them.
But
later on, we will resist them because of their attitude that they put on. But later on, they came in as though they were sheep. I hope you're getting it. And later on, they demonstrated they were not after our own good. And that was when our ancestors started fighting for the total independence of
Africa.
Africa.
So they started with slavery.
Exactly.
Taking our people away. Were mirrors part of the?
Of course. These were some of the basic things
when
that they were
came
using.
Africa, we were not having anything we can see ourselves through.
Yeah, and you see, one thing is that during all this period, we are not having united regions within the continent.
It was empires.
Exactly. Okay. And we're always looking ourselves within our empires. That was the thing that hindered us. We're not having united, like as we have them
like
today, like Ghana, Togo, Nigeria, Togo. We're not having states like that.
Only Ghana
we're living
empire,
as separate nationalities, like within our various tribes we have
ethnic groups and
exactly. So that was one thing that. So what happened is that, especially when you take Gold Coast, for example, you know, they first of all came in contact with the Fantis. When the Europeans came in contact with the Gold Coast, the first people they had connection with was the Fantis, and the Fantis started benefiting from the Europeans.
So they allowed them to penetrate.
Exactly. And even when they came there, some of them were, in fact, because of the magnificent buildings that they had, the fort and the castle, the people were like, you know, most of them were living in huts, buildings and funny buildings. So when they saw this magnificent building, they said, wow, why don't we connect with these people?
I think these people have something to offer.
Exactly. I hope you're getting it. So their first relation with the Fantis, and at that time when they came in contact with the Fantis, there was some kind of improvement in the lives of the Fantis. So the later on, those in the northern and the interior will now become jealous.
Okay.
I hope you get it.
It means they want more white people to also come to their
exactly
regions.
And also because the Fantis had first hand connecting the Europeans, they were enjoying from the slave trade. Because they themselves were not producing slaves. Most of the slaves that took place were coming from, in the case of Ghana or the Gold Coast, were coming from the northern parts. But the Fantis became the middlemen. So when they go and carry or gather all the slaves, some of them, they gather them, Salaga, and when they bring them, the Fantis will be the one that will hand the slave to the Europeans. And they will now take whatever prices that they sold the slave for, and they will now give it to them. So they can cheat in the process of, in the exchange of commodities. In fact, the slaves were seen as commodities. I hope you're getting it. And that broke, or it led to some kind of resentment among the people. So it prevented the unity. Yeah.
They have bitter feelings against each other. Like, it's rational though, you know.
Yeah.
You can't sell my brother and expect him to like you.
Of course.
Wow.
And that one became the more or less like the necessary thing that the Africans at that time needed to have gotten rid of this yoke of European interference in the continent of Africa.
Wow.
But the unfortunate aspect was that
we were not united.
We were not united.
Okay. So they did all that they did.
And one thing that is very dear to me is that the slave trade that the Europeans engaged themselves was very brutal. In fact, they had little affection for the people, for the slave, or sympathy for the slaves. Most of them died on the spot. Some of them died out of starvation. Some of them that were, in fact, ill in the process of them carrying to the Americas and the Caribbeans. They were not having time for them because they were after the energetic. So even you as individual or as a slave, if they see you that you are sick, they see you are causing them because you are a commodity.
They've bought you.
They bought you.
And you are
so they don't
again.
Consider as to whether you are a human being or not. The aspect that they are concerned is their economic benefit.
Wow. And
the treatment that they went through was very harsh. Some of them, in fact, they hardly give them the opportunity to even bath. So they'll put them in cell and they'll keep them for a very long time and they'll be very smelly. And the unfortunate thing was that they molested most of the women that they took them as slaves. Some of them were, in fact, being raped. Some of them were being maltreated badly. And these were some of the sad aspects whenever we are
talking about slavery.
Exactly.
Wow. And suddenly they took all our stronger men out there.
It affected we the Africans badly.
Okay.
Economically, in fact, psychologically, socially. because the energetic that could stay in the continent to reproduce healthy children were taken away, and the aged were left in the continent, who could not manage the economy, who could not engage in any meaningful economic venture. These people were the ones left on the shores of Africa, and they couldn't do anything that would improve the economies of the people. Psychologically, it affected the people.
It's a whole lot.
It's a whole lot.
So, what brought about colonialism?
Yeah.
Or when did this slavery end?
Yeah. So the
Before
slavery.
the colonialism.
Sure. So the slavery, I think the initiative to stop slavery was first started by British.
British again.
British.
The same people who came to start it.
Of course. But they were not only the pioneers of the activities of slavery. You can talk of the Portuguese, the French. All these people were part of the activities of slavery. The Belgians, they were all parts.
Wow.
And why would they stop slavery? Because to some point, they realized that the Africans were coming into their territories too much, and they realized that exactly. Because the funny aspect here is that these people are human beings.
Oh yeah, Papa. Oh yeah, oh yeah, funny.
And as you are carrying them there, they are definitely going to reproduce. Very fantastic. Hey. And this explains why later on America,
funny but painful story.
In fact, this explains why later on America, when they got independence. That is 1776. When America got independence, they led a certain movement trying to repatriate Africans back to their origins. So we know the country.
Is it for the interest of Africans that they should be repatriated?
That is for their benefit, as I said initially. They realize that they
want to have some space.
Exactly.
They've gotten what they want.
They realize if a time is coming, if they don't do that, they will dominate.
Yes, they've had what they wanted.
Exactly. I hope you are getting
Bob Marley said that now that you've got what you wanted, you don't even know my name. It's so funny.
So these are some of the funny aspects of it. Wow. I hope you're getting it. And the interesting thing was that they needed to bring these people back because they felt that they should not be part of the economy this time around. After they had used them in their fields, their plantation, and even their construction, their construction sites. Wow. These people the Africans were actually the one that built.
They built the Europe.
In fact, they used them in their construction sites, their mining sites. These people were used there. And their economic site as well. I hope you're getting it. So it became, it boils down to the fact that, in fact, it was since a very long time that these people had not been after our own good. Because if they were after our own good, having used us to build whatever they want, they could have maintained us there. But so the rationale was that
you are done.
Exactly.
Go back home.
Go back home. This explains in American history, we're having the period of the apartheid system, whereby the Africans were segregated. If you're an African in America sometime, there are certain school you cannot attend. There are certain job you cannot.
You are limited.
Exactly. And the words of doctor.
You cannot marry their wives, their girls.
Exactly. And through the civil rights movement led by Dr. Martin King Luther Jr. They were able to resolve most of these issues. And even in South Africa, when these people, Mandela. The Dutch, when they came when they also came to Africa, South Africa.
Where from these Dutch people?
They are also European.
From which countries specifically?
For now, I don't have the detail about it. But one thing that they
came. They are also from Europe.
Exactly. When they came, they were not ready to leave Africa. Looking at
Are they the people who settled in South Africa?
Exactly.
Wow. They are still there currently.
They are still there currently. And they are the ones that actually also.
The place suit them. So.
South Africa doesn't have if I'm right, mosquitoes.
Okay.
And one of the things that were killing them was mosquito when they came to Africa. Okay. So most of them, that's why they described the continent as the white man's grave. Most of them, when they came there, they were dying.
They were dying
because of some of the conditions that they were not familiar with.
The bad conditions.
Exactly. I hope you're getting it. So South Africa, in fact, also went through the experience of apartheid, and through the innovations of Nelson Mandela, they were able to come out
of
successfully.
They even arrested and imprisoned.
In fact,
and
so imagine all the
people.
So Africans have really suffered a lot when it comes to slavery. They have really suffered a lot.
Okay.
So as I said, by 1806,
okay,
British passed a bill in their parliament,
okay,
which meant that any act of slavery was illegal. And at that time, you had
the world or in
British.
Okay.
Yeah. But later on, it got into the notion of other European powers that there was a call for the end of what? Slavery. And also through the campaigns and movement of African intellectuals and also the Christendom movement. They formed so many movements that started criticizing the practice of slavery, and also
even the Bible preaches so.
Exactly.
Their own book they brought to slavers.
Yes.
Is now preaching against their acts.
The Bible was even used to justify slavery in the initial part.
Wow.
But later on, because it was they did that just based on their own personal gains. But that wasn't the true interpretation of the Bible. They did it just to justify whatever you are doing, you need justification before you can do it.
You can do it.
So they just used the Bible to justify that the Africans were supposed to be the servants of the whites. And through that, they use that to come and take our strong women and men away to go and enslave. So these were some of the challenges. But of course, there was a campaign and there was a movement that was started by prominent people to end the practice of slavery, which is also very important. That cannot.
Wow. So let's look at the colonialism. So it's because of the movements that America and the rest of the world were advocating. Exactly. That is what suddenly ended the slavery. So let's look at colonialism. How and when did it also start?
Okay. So colonialism, the word colonialism, so what does it entail? Colonialism, when you say colonialism, is a situation whereby an external power extends its authority over a weaker state to exploit that weaker state economically. In fact, the emphasis here is exploitation of that country's economy. That's the basic or the fundamental knowledge that you need to get so far as colonialism is concerned. It's meant for economic gains.
Okay.
It's for exploitation.
Okay.
Okay, so now back to the question when it started in Africa. The African continent had different